Hello and welcome to the latest edition of What Does the Giraffe Say with me, Kathleen Ratornate. We are an organisation that aims to connect people with conservation with people around the world by sharing their stories on social media. Today I am very happy because I am joined by Brent Leo-Smith, and he is one of the founders of Painted Dog TV. So Brent, if I could just hand over to you, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background in conservation and then how the idea for the organisation began.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, it's really exciting. And so basically, I started out as in the safari industry. My parents were involved in tourism. My dad's one of the founders of what is now And Beyond. So I grew up between Pinda and then we moved across to Botswana.
Oh, I think we've lost him somehow. Okay, let's see if we can get him back on. Bear with us, guys. The joys of modern technology. Okay, so I'm just telling him to log back in on the same link if he can make it. It might be an issue with his Wi-Fi, his side. If you could bear with us, guys. Okay, so I can see we get some viewers on, so hopefully, I can see him trying to come back in. Let me see if we can bring him back in. Back? You are back on the show. Welcome back.
Sorry about that. The dogs took everything for a tumble as they ran through the extension cord.
It happens.
But I'm back. Sorry about that, everyone. I'm very lucky, fortunate that I grew up in the bush. We actually even had a teacher who lived with us at Pinda, so it was only my brother and I in the classroom. And then went into naturally what normally happens, the guiding industry, and I've guided and worked in Botswana, Zambia, Tanzania, Kenya, Congo, Gabon, and I got to the stage where I was a bit jaded with guests. It wasn't the guests' fault. I had some very good advice from a guy who says, but when you dislike the guests before they've got off the aeroplane, might be time to move out of the lodge industry. So that's sort of what happened. And then started dabbling in the filming side. So being able to be out in the bush all the time, just with the animals. And I'd been up in Gabon doing some consulting work for the development of ecotourism in Longa National Park. And I came back and I actually didn't have a clue what I was going to do. And a friend recommended me through to Wild Earth. And I ended up at Wild Earth for 4 years, doing live safaris all over Congo, Rwanda, Kenya, South Africa. And there I met Vim, who's the other founder of Painted Dog TV. And we did 4 years, and an amazing 4 years with Wild Earth and doing live shows for National Geographic and Chinese television and South African television. And it was really exciting and it was wonderful. But what was very close to our hearts was actually the conservation side, where with Wild Earth, it was amazing. We got to show people all the amazing animals, but we didn't really ever focus on some of the issues and problems that faced the animals that we were viewing. So I'm just trying to think. I think we worked it out the one day. VM and I spent, on average, I think it was over 100 hours a week just sitting next to lions and stuff. And so he was the cameraman and I was the presenter, and we just ended up talking, and that's sort of where the idea for Painted Dog came from. And then in 2019, end of 2018, we quit our safe jobs and and we jumped into starting Painted Dog with a focus more on the conservation side. And that's really changed and developed over the last 2 years, and how we do things and what we do things. Initially, we were almost all non-live. Now, live broadcasts make up a big part of what we do. And one of the really fascinating things is we had to do a sort of 180 at the beginning of COVID, and focus on the live rather than on the pre-produced sort of blue chip, which we still do, but we've pushed a big focus to live, and particularly in terms of conservation. Now, a lot of the conservation organizations just in our little area around Hoedspruit, and here the woodlands kingfishers, for those who might know. So we're actually sitting in the middle of Greater Kruger National Park at the moment. So often we have elephants around the house and all sorts. But what we did is a lot of the rhino dehornings, the elephant research that's being done, particularly work with wild dogs and cheetah, the traditional funding for that completely disappeared during COVID because it is tourism. People either pay to go on these experiences, or the lodges and the big tourism companies are big donors to the nonprofits that are doing these procedures. And we saw a unique opportunity to make a very big difference in this. And everyone thought we were a bit mad to try broadcast live a conservation, because things can go wrong. I mean, darts don't work, elephants get angry, all sorts of things, and people thought we were crazy. And we're really lucky. We worked with an amazing bunch of people on the ground here who were willing to take the chance. And we did the wild dog, in particular with Endangered Wildlife Trust, was the first ever of its kind. And we've done with Endangered Wildlife Trust a whole bunch of firsts. The first ever live release of a pack of wild dogs out of a holding boma. That was quite stressful because as we opened the gates, dogs come out, 3 male lions ran in and tried to kill the dogs. So
Oh, wow.
The cameraman got a bit of a fright, the shaky camera, and I was actually standing. I jumped out of the car and ran at the lions. I got the wild dogs behind me, and I'm shouting at the lions, "Go away, lions! Go away!" And so that was the first of its kind, and it was really exciting. Since then, we had a live camera up at a wild dog den where you could see all the puppies and watch them grow up, and that was up in the wilderness and the Waterberg in Lapalala Wilderness. Now, those dogs, very few people realize they're completely genetically distinct from the rest of the wild dogs in Southern Africa, which makes them, from a savior of the species point of view, very important. And they unfortunately kept roaming into farmland, kept eating cattle, so they were going to get shot. So they've actually been caught, and we managed to put a camera up in the boma that was holding them and watch the puppies grow up. Now, those dogs are actually now part of this incredible EWT, the Endangered Wildlife Trust range expansion program. So they actually form new packs, and those genetics are now going to go into Mozambique, into the Kutada 12 near Gorongosa. And so it's really amazing that we've been able to be part and help raise funds for these incredible sort of projects that a lot of people don't realize. And then we've got another presenter who joined us just after lockdown. She's the world's only female Japanese trails guide in the world. There's no other, and so she does live broadcasts in Japanese. And on the 7th of next month, we'll be broadcasting a rhino dehorning live in Japanese to Japan, and the funds raised from that actually are what is paying for the dehornings and paying for the different things. There's Yuka sitting next to me in studio. So with these live experiences, we've managed to now find a way that we can actually help with the conservation side and actually get critical work paid for while expanding people's knowledge and taking these experiences to anywhere you are. You can go watch a wild dog be collared live sitting at home. And from Vim and myself and Charles, the other director, it's really important that we are able to give back to the animals that we love so much and we follow on a daily basis. I mean, the slogan of our company there, that's the world's first ever live elephant collaring. So that was another first show. We did a lot of crazy things in the last 2 years. And you can see that big antenna sticking out of the top there. Again, it was something people said couldn't be done. There wasn't a good enough signal or cell phone reception. So I think Vim worked on that rig till about 1 o'clock in the morning the day before we had to do it, because the elephants had moved into an area that there wasn't signal. We had to make a thing that could point to the top of the Drakensberg Mountains, and it was only supposed to work for 40 kilometers. We had it working at over 60 kilometers. So it's I think the most important thing for us is being able to give back. And I don't think there's any challenge that we would not say no to.
Excellent. I love that. And I love the way you're being so like using your initiative to try and come up and create these incredible TV shows for people to see. Have you found then that you're able to maybe spark some interest in people that may not have had passion for conservation before, or especially now in these times where everyone is stuck at home, they're able to watch these shows and learn about these different animals that they can't actually go and physically go and see? And then how do people kind of feeding from that? How do people fund it, and how do you get the funds to then be able to do that?
So that the funds, as everyone knows, is generally the hardest thing. But we definitely have an uptake. I think we've got people from now close on 50 different countries that tune into these events now, and people didn't even realize that I mean, we did a show yesterday on the difference between forest elephants and African savanna elephants and Asian elephants, and a lot of people thought they were just elephants. All elephants were the same. So we're definitely noticing that there is a bigger push, and while people have been stuck at home, a need for content, and we would rather have them getting some educational content that is also making a difference to people on the ground than the normal sort of what you would watch. Yeah. Hi, Bob. Bob's a long-time viewer, so we know Bob well. Yeah, so there's different ways in how we fund this. So the wild dogs and stuff like that, a lot of the wild dog stuff, we self-funded because no one believed we could do it. So we took a bit of a gamble, and we just did it for literally on the bones of our bums, just scraping enough to get work. People like Bob and other viewers, they've been instrumental in that. They've donated to these things just to make sure we've been able to do them. And because of that, we're now getting to the stage where we're actually pitching them to corporates as corporate events. Yeah, that was another world first. Catching wild dogs with nets, with using helicopters to herd them. And of course, stuff like that is incredibly expensive. I mean, a helicopter runs 8,500 rand an hour. Vet fees, drug fees. Now, once you've caught these dogs that are in a bad area, where do you put them? Now you've got them in a boma. You've got to feed them. So there's lots of different ways that we've managed to, thankfully, with EWT and other incredible partners, just make a plan at the moment. But we are starting to see now that there is some real corporate interests. We've got some very big corporates from overseas, from the US and the UK, that are now interested in these as events for their companies. So their staff are able to do something unique, as well as giving back to conservation. And so it's taken its time. But yeah, we wouldn't have been able to get there without our incredible fans, because a lot of these things have been funded by them.
Yeah. So with that, I mean, you've touched on it a bit briefly. I mean, I'm not sure you're going to be able to beat the lions coming into the wild dog story, but obviously you are doing these things live, and you are in the bush and you are dealing with wildlife. I mean, you've pretty much got a very combustible combination of things that could very easily kind of go wrong. Or may not happen at all. You know, you can't predict what you're going to see if you're out on a safari. I know you can go and check beforehand, but animals move.
A lot.
So how do you deal with these challenges? And have you got any kind of interesting stories that you can share about this?
Well, we've got very lucky and incredible team, and that roll with the punches. And I mean, I think the first wild dog, live collaring of a free roaming pack of wild dogs. So lions, leopards, elephants, rhino, you can track. You can keep a close eye on them. Wild dogs can do 50 Ks in a day. They can be here tomorrow, and they can be 50 kilometers away by this afternoon. So like that was, I think, one of the most stressful ones for us, because we had them the day before, and then it rained. So it wiped out all the tracks. We had no idea. And we were working with Thornybush Private Nature Reserve with their canine unit guys. And like everyone was like, well, we've got no idea. We've been looking, I think we were looking for the dogs for like 8 hours. And then we heard on the Game Drive channel that there was an Inyala that had just run into a dam and was being killed by a hippo. And the only time an Inyala chooses to dive into a dam full of crocodiles and hippos is when there are wild dogs after them. So we immediately knew where the dogs were, and we rushed there. And I think we'd been looking for the dogs since 5 a.m, and we got the dart in at 5:45 that night. So that was probably one of the more stressful ones. But again, it's just incredible that the vets we work with, the guys on the ground, that's what makes it non-combustible. We've got a hugely experienced team of professionals that we work with, and from the capture space and the reserve space. And our guys, I mean, no one else really does it. And all of us have got 10 plus years experience in the bush. So when things do go wrong, which they do from time to time, calm heads are what's most important. I think what's the worst thing what's happened is probably someone fell off a car and they weren't holding on properly, and it wasn't one of our guys.
Yeah. And then kind of feeding through that as well. I mean, I'm English, and there's a big TV show back home that if you're English, that people would follow, and that's called This Morning. And I know you did a live safari with them.
We're going to be doing a few more coming up.
Now, that's awesome. If anyone gets the chance to watch, then I would say to go and watch it. Do you feel nervous then when you're going out if to find these animals, and are you desperately like looking around thinking, okay, if I don't see a mammal, we can talk about this bird or this tree? How does that work?
Well, so the TV stuff, it's more mammal focused, so the birds aren't that interesting. But I think the second one was definitely the most stressful. So we had our favorite pride of lions with a little, there's a female in there called Bucket, who I actually rescued when she was 2 months old and took her back to her mom and put it back in the den. So it's a very special lion to us. And they were in the best place, in the most perfect signal, this great big open area. And it was hot. So I was like, great, they're not moving, they're not going anywhere. I think it was 15 minutes before we were supposed to go live on ITV. They just got up and marched and went into the thickest drainage line. I think we managed to show about 3 centimeters of a lion's ear on ITV, maybe a nose and an eye, but that's the thing. Being live, you've got to be able to sort of roll around with the punches, and being flexible, and being able to actually, one of the most important things is being able to laugh at yourself and accept, sorry guys, we're live, we're from the middle of the bush. We can't control what the animals are going to do. And for me, I think that's something people are looking for. It's real. It's not set up. It hasn't had, so I'm not going to say any names, but I struggle to watch 99% of wildlife documentaries because it's mostly made up. So they'll have the lion called George. And if you know anything about lions, by the time you're 10 minutes in, George has been 12 different lions. And she's and like that. Oh no, I'm not going to go into that. It gets me a bit worked up. But yeah, so I think people are looking for something that's real, and one of the most important things as well is we don't hide the hard stuff, the snares, the poaching, and we look at it from both sides. We are going to be going to do some interviews in the villages now, where quite a famous leopard who became famous because he was on TV, killed a warthog live on National Geographic. And he now got shot in a village, and we're actually going out and to chat to the people in the village, meet the lady, and stuff in this week, and then we're having another discussion about it on Friday night live. So we don't shy away from the difficult things, and I think people really need to understand that and know about the difficult stuff. It's not all planet Earth out here. There's a lot of big struggles that people and animals are facing, and a lot of people sitting all around the world, and South Africa included. And I mean, the first thing they say is shoot the poacher, and I'm saying, if you're saying shoot the poacher, you've already lost the battle. Yeah. Don't go around killing people. It's not nice. But there's and those are the type of real discussions that I don't think get had enough on social media and in wildlife conservation, documentary making, etc. It's always the plight of the animal, but we are also animals, and our plight is interconnected with theirs. And if you're living on the edge of these areas, an elephant coming through and eating your maize that represents your food for the next 6 months, your children's survival. You want that elephant gone. You don't see it for its beauty. You see it for its menace to you. And there's a lot of those conversations. I think they're starting to happen more often, but I still believe they need to be had more often and more openly. And I'm probably going to get into a bit of trouble for this one, but I think a lot of the reserves and national parks and that need to actually be more open and honest and upfront with the general public about what happens to these animals. It's the same thing as that everyone sees the sign, don't feed the monkeys. But everyone's like, oh, but it's so cute, let me feed the monkey. You don't understand. Every time you feed that monkey, that means someone's loading up a firearm behind to shoot that monkey, because you've now made it a problem, and it's going to bite a child, or it's going to bite someone and cause some damage. So it's truths like that don't often get said.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think it's very easy for people to be sitting at the comfort of their home watching a TV show and think, oh, the people that are doing the poaching are terrible humans and this kind of thing. But you're absolutely right. There's a struggle that's going on, and there needs to be some more work being done on the actual human-wildlife conflict side to stop that, rather than just going over and labeling people good people or bad people.
And a lot of conservation issues in the modern era are actually economic problems rather than scientific or resource-based problems. So yes, there's one very big fact. Bigger problem than poaching, a bigger problem than all forms of poaching is loss of habitat. There is no more space. So that's the biggest problem. How do you expand these areas? How do you expand conservation areas? And how do you do that while making sure the people who have lived there are able to benefit and live side by side with wildlife?
100%. We got someone agreeing with you here. We've got Barbara Simpkins, and she's saying that you're always honest with us, Brent, and it makes us all the more aware of what is really going on. So your voice is being heard.
Thanks, Barbara.
So the other thing I wanted to ask as well is, obviously you've been doing all these great shows. Did you have training in doing media work? And what kind of advice would you give to someone who is watching what you're doing and thinks, okay, I want to do something like that when I grow up, or as my next career?
Well, strange enough, I have very little training in anything. Apart from just being out in the bush. So obviously I had some really incredible teachers from a very young age. I was lucky enough to spend time with the trackers and that from 10, 12, going out tracking lions and leopards and in Botswana and in Zululand and then obviously working. But from the media side, well, I'd say you have to say a big thank you to Wild Earth. I mean, they saw something in me and chucked me in front of a camera. I was absolutely terrified. And if you look at my first ever live drive, guys, we're just going to go drive around, look for some animals. And off I went, hiding from this camera that was sitting over me. And then I think just at the time, I became more confident. And I think, strangely enough, the next generation, it's more natural to them to be able to turn around and talk at a camera. But yeah, my best advice is find if you're passionate about whatever it is. And I think for me, it's less about being in front of the camera and it's more about being out with the animals and trying to make a difference there. So I think that's what will come through in whatever you do. If you're passionate about the wildlife, don't think the camera is, don't do it if the camera is the reason you're doing it, would be my actual advice. So for me, it's a way to get the message across about the animals I care deeply about.
We've got another comment coming through here as well from Stacey Satterfield. She's a regular viewer. Hi, Stacey. And
Hi,
she's
Stacey.
saying it's so important for people outside of Africa to see the struggles for the locals living alongside wildlife. So yeah, going back to what we were talking about earlier and showing that side of things as well.
It is. I mean, and people don't really understand. I mean, just let's take COVID right now. A lot of people who used to work in the lodges in the Sabi Sands and the Timbavati and the Greater Kruger have been retrenched. There's no tourists. There's no work. So those people have lost their income, and the government grant that you're supposed to survive off is, I think we worked it out, it's $22 a week that you have got to survive and keep your family fed with. So at the moment, it's quite interesting. Things like rhino poaching and that actually down. compared to what it was before COVID. But things like snaring, meat poaching, just subsistence and survival poaching is way up. You've got a lot of people who worked in the reserves who now don't have work, but still have to feed their families.
Yeah. We got another comment coming through from Barb Russell, and they're saying that you had the dogs help you break the ice on your first drive.
I
So
did.
Did they come to your rescue, did they?
I did, yes. Yeah, so as one might figure, wild dogs are by far my most favorite animal. And on my first ever live drive, a big pack of wild dogs actually made an appearance. So, and then I was just excited, and I think I forgot about the nerves of the camera, etc. Thanks, Danny. Yeah, so well, I could tell you that. So everything's wild dog. We painted dog TV. Even my Jack Russell is called Mashlorloa, which means wild dog in Shangaan. Yeah, so everything's sort of wild dog around here. Except for VM. VM's favorite's mongooses.
And then kind of feeding back into what we were just talking about as well with COVID. So you're mentioning that you've seen an increase in the poaching for the bushmeat trade. And this is something that I've been hearing a lot of as well when I've been discussing these topics on this show. But how else has it impacted? Has it impacted you in the way that you can actually do your job, or has it actually, in a roundabout way, helped that you've now kind of got a captive audience to show these things to?
Definitely. I mean, I mean, we're very lucky. We've been able to actually grow and expand during COVID, and due to people being stuck at home and consuming more sort of online media, and whether it be live or non-live. But yeah, so from our point of view, it hasn't really affected us in terms of being able to do our job. We've were able to operate even under level 5 lockdown as a media conservation company. We have permits that we could travel with. But as I said, again, one of the most important things for us now is to actually show everyone else that it is really affecting the tourism industry in particular. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the lodges, directly and indirectly, are huge funders to conservation. And when I say indirectly, the fact that there are people willing to pay to come stay in a lodge, that creates jobs in the local communities surrounding the conservation areas. It creates value in the animals. And now, obviously, with no tourists, that value is diminished in terms of the animals. The animals are now either a food source or a threat. They're not a source of income. And there are lots of people doing their best to try help everyone and sort of try and maintain the status quo till the world becomes a little bit more normal again.
Yeah. And is there a way that when you're doing your shows and you're promoting these conservation work that other people are doing as well as yourselves, is there a way that people back home can support that?
Yeah, depending. So what we found actually works a lot better in the last little while, because we've been working with Endangered Wildlife Trust fully for 2 years now, is that often what happens is that people come up with these really big numbers. This is what it takes to run the Wild Dog Project a year, etc., stuff like that. So what we do with the live events and stuff is we try to fund a per event way. So literally, okay, we know it costs 60,000 rand for a collar. We know it's going to cost us 10,000 rand in helicopter fees. We know it's going to cost us 5,000 rand in vet fees. And so then what we'll do is try get, we've been very lucky. There's been some incredible individual sponsors from South Africa, from big business and that, who will cover quite a lot of that. And then what we do is try to take it to everyone else. And everyone's struggling at the moment. Lots of people have lost jobs and stuff. So we understand that there isn't money to go around. Yeah. But we try and make sure that if people do want to help, you can help for as little as $1. And that could be even something like towards the dog food for the canine units for a year. Just to help pay for the anti-poaching guys' dogs, the food or the vet bills and stuff like that. And also from a point of view, in it's something tangible. You can go back and visit, and we will go back and visit. You can actually see where your hard-earned dollar has gone and what exactly it's been spent on. So we make sure we are very, very open and honest about when we do fundraising, exactly where every cent is spent.
Yeah, that's great. And if people wanted back home to donate, is there a website that they can go to?
At the moment, we're actually busy setting up an NPO called an emergency fund. We just a lot of the bank, or the government side of the banking stuff in South Africa is not working quite as quickly as it used to, just due to COVID. A lot of people are not in the office, so to speak. But normally what we'll do is we'll raise funds per event. So there is one coming up for rhinos in this next week, where we will be, we've raised quite a lot of the funds already to cover, I think, half of the rhinos on a reserve, but there are 16 in total. So there are a few rhinos that are still we still need a bit of cash for to remove their horns, and that'll all be all over our social media in the coming week. And what we'll do is we're going to live stream that free to air for everyone to watch, and then anyone who wants to make a donation to covering the costs of that dehorning, there will be all the information on the flyers and videos that will be coming out in the next week.
Excellent. And when did you say it was going to be shown again?
So the Japanese one is the 7th of March, but then it'll be the next weekend. I cannot think what the next weekend is after the 7th of March. No, I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. I'm sure it'll be on your
the second Saturday of March.
And then I just want to actually just go back to what you were saying with the Japanese stuff as well. Is that a kind of a target audience for you then? And then is that a growing? Is there a big following of conservation, or is that building? What's the reason behind this?
Well, strangely enough, a lot of people don't know this. The Japanese market is one of the biggest consumers of wildlife content in the world, and has been for a very long time. The NHK, the national broadcaster, spends a lot of money on wildlife content. And I met Yuka probably 5-6 years ago when she was still a student starting out. And she's just got this incredible presence with us, particularly when in her home language, and she does amazingly well with me teasing her in English. But she's incredibly got hold of some massive celebrities in Japan to raise funds for this dehorning, and eventually we would love to be able to do it in Chinese, German, Swiss. I'm sorry, Swiss. That's also German, Spanish, Italian. Obviously, there are not that many of those guides knocking about all the time who want to stop guiding as such and jump in front of a camera. But eventually we would really hope to take it into different languages to just get that message out to as many different countries and markets as possible.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea. We've got one more as well commenting saying that people should become a member of the pack.
Yes, we do appreciate our pack members. And there's a lot of interesting stuff coming with that. So we're moving to a subscription base where there'll be content available to people. That is, we'll always do the stuff that's open for everyone to watch, but there'll be premiere content that you will pay a monthly subscription to be part of, and that's the pack. And there's different tiers. There's puppies, sub-adults, adults, and soon-to-be alphas.
Excellent, I love it. Okay, so I've only got one more question left, and then we can start wrapping up. If anyone back home has a question that they would like to put towards Brent, then please pop it in the comments and I will do so. And if you're watching this and it's not live, please do still feel free to put your questions in and we'll try and get back to you. I think he's just getting harassed by his dogs at the minute. Was your puppy feeling left out?
Yeah, she was chasing Heidi-Dars.
Okay, so today is actually International Tourist Guide Day. And I know that obviously what you're doing is more kind of live and video and that now. But have you had a moment of when you're doing these things that you're like, this is exactly why I do my job? What's kind of like your favorite success moment?
I think any of the sort of live events where and a lot of them have been emergencies. So the first live wild dog release we ever did, that was an emergency. We had to raise those funds to catch those dogs quickly because the farmer had literally said, if you do not fetch these dogs now, they're going to get shot. And I would say for me, it gives me goosebumps even now. The response from our viewers, how quickly everyone jumped on board, and we managed to get those funds in record time to catch that pack of wild dogs, put them in a boma, and keep them safe. I think that's, for me, you can't get much better than that. And it was the first one as well. And just to know that everyone out there cares as much and trusts us, that we are telling you the truth, and we're not going to spend the funds that are used on something else. It will go directly to the animals.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's also just goes, as you said, to showcase just how supportive people actually are of the work that's being done in conservation and their desire to actually help. And amid the times when everything can seem a bit bleak, having that support and getting that kind of hope kind of gives you a momentum to keep going and to know that it is working.
It is, exactly. And as I said, that's just, dogs, get away. You're going to make everything fall over again. Go away. Juno, sorry. I literally decided that playing at my feet is the best place to play. And last time they went through the extension cable.
Okay, excellent. Well, I think your dogs are telling you it's playtime, so we'll
It's
start
dinner
to wrap
time, actually.
now.
I think it's the
There
problem.
you go. That's way more important.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you'd like to say before we say goodbye?
Just a big thank you to you for having us here, and incredible work you're doing. So we're very happy to be part of that, and to chat with you and your viewers has been a real privilege. And just a big thank you to everyone who's getting involved any way they can, even if you can't help financially. Just sharing and speaking about it and having the conversations is just as important. So a big thank you to everyone, really.
Excellent, yeah, and to kind of follow up with that as well. Thank you everyone back home for watching and for all your support. Hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And as Brent says, just sharing these posts and promoting the work that people are doing really does go a long way to kind of making people more aware of the work that is going on. So please do like, comment, and share all of our videos, and it'd be really appreciated. Meanwhile, thank you very much for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Cheers, guys.